Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around.
I'm excited to introduce. This is Stephen Atatumbi. How you doing, Stephen?
Man, I'm doing fantastic.
It's good to see you,
I,
man.
I'd be doing even better if I looked as good as you.
Stop it! Stop it, man. Dude,
Oh man,
I think you got me beat in that department.
man, I'm trying to get that little salt and pepper in my beard. I ain't got that yet.
Uh, Stephen, where are you from, man? And how old are you? Where do you live? Where are you
Social
talking from?
security number.
Yeah.
Man, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. That's where I live right now. I work as a web designer. I also sing gospel and soul music. So I'm just kind of dibbling, dabbling in a lot of things.
Is that where you're from originally? Atlanta, Georgia?
No, not actually. I moved to Atlanta about almost 10 years ago to do a master's degree at Savannah College of Art and Design. They have a campus in Atlanta, and I went to do my master's in fine arts there. And but prior to that, I was living in Southern California. That was where I was born, but I actually didn't grow up there. I grew up in Florida, Orlando, Florida. So, I mean, if you want to get into all the different places I've lived, we'll probably spend the rest of this our time together just talking about that. But yeah, I've lived quite a few different places in the United States.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and you've ended up in Atlanta, Georgia.
That's correct.
Yeah, cool. Um, well, I want to talk a little bit, just briefly, about where we met. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I don't even remember how we met, to be honest. I don't remember the day we met or what was going on. Did we meet?
I think
I
I
don't
have some. I think I have some
remember.
vague memories of how. I think I met you at a church. Someone invited me to a church. I went there, and you were the only nice person I met at that church. It was just you. Like you came up and talked to me, and I was like, it was like, oh, that's a cool dude. You know, we talked for a little bit. Everybody, no one else said hi to me at that church.
So, guys, Avondale, this guy Steven here, man, he sang at my wedding. So, this guy broke it down at my wedding. So, yeah, it's good. We've been friends for a long time. So,
Right.
um, we had a lot of fun times in Spokane, a lot of fun times. We won't spend too much time on that. So, a lot of laughing, a lot of laughter. Um, hey, I just want to start with a prayer, man. We're going to get into some stuff, and I just want to pray, and then I'm going to ask you to pray at the end of this when we're all done with all this. Is that all right? All right,
Works
let's
for me.
pray. God, thanks so much that we can be together. Thanks that I can have a chat with Stephen, and I just pray that you lead us through this time as we talk about this stuff. I pray that your Spirit would lead this conversation in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So, Stephen, I want to talk about what's going on in the world right now. I mean, I know specifically the United States is going through some really tough times, um, but it's happening around the world as well. We've got stuff happening here in Australia. We don't hear a lot about what the protest, as much about what the protest is about, as we hear about the riots and about the violence and some of the things that are going on. And so I want to highlight some stuff today, just talking about what's happening, what's behind all this, um, and get your reaction, I guess, to all of it and how you feel about it. So, what's it like there in Atlanta, Georgia?
Well, it's nice inside of my house. I'll start
Yeah,
with that. But if you just want a background on what caused, a lot of what you're seeing, and of course, it seems like you guys out there in Australia are pretty much up to speed with a lot of this because we all share the same neighborhood now with the internet, you know. But just to kind of recap it, um, I would say this kind of started in May. You know, in May there was a video of the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery, and it was a guy who was jogging in a neighborhood that was predominantly white, and a couple folks just thought he was he was a thief or something, and they drove behind him and eventually just came out and just shot him pretty much. I mean, you can watch the video, but they just pretty much shot him. And so that caused quite a bit of angst. But it's not like their first time, because it's like a lot of things, the backstory is a lot of racist incidents have been kind of, they've been sort of captured with greater frequency, because people are becoming more comfortable with the cell phone and with recording, and they know to record when they start recording when they see something funny. And so because people are recording and everyone has the devices in their hands, it's kind of shed a light on a way of life that's been happening in the United States for people of color, minorities, and Black people for quite some time. So Ahmaud Arbery was the most recent that came up, and there was a lot of angst off of that. Right. And then we came to a couple weeks ago with the situation of George Floyd. And I'll admit, I have not even seen I've seen pictures, I've seen little clips, but I haven't watched the full thing because it's just too emotionally wrecking for me. And I literally, Ahmaud Arbery's video I was a wreck after that, and I just didn't have the capacity. But just seeing the images and seeing some of the transcripts of what was said in the video had a profound impact on me. But not just me, though. Essentially the whole world had seen that, and I think that kind of combined with the two recent incidents to kind of pull the sheet off of what it just makes it so plain that there is a very widespread systemic problem in America when it comes to race and systemic issues of violence and the justice system and things of that nature.
I want to just talk momentarily about, and so we can have a little bit better understanding, especially for the students that are watching. We're seeing a lot of stuff with the hashtag Black Lives Matter, and this is obviously a movement that's really big in the United States and is now moving around the world. It's in Europe, it's in London, it's in you see in those signs here in Australia even.
Yeah, you guys had a big showing. A lot of the news coverage out here, we saw a lot of Australia in our news coverage here.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that means we're making an impact. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, we heard about you guys.
I know it goes back to 2013, but it goes back. I mean, obviously, it goes back a lot further than that, and we can't unpack the entire history of the of America today and slavery and civil rights and everything. But obviously, there's a whole history behind this before 2013. Problems with race and just in America. But my understanding is in 2013 there was a police officer or a security officer who was acquitted for a shooting of a young man named Trayvon Martin. And then a hashtag was sent out as a response to that called, they sent out the hashtag Black Lives Matter on Twitter. What else do you know about that?
It's like you said, it was in response to, the hashtag was started in response to a history. It wasn't just something that was just spur of the moment. It was something that was responding to an experience and trying to really communicate that this experience that a lot of people were having in the United States didn't affirm that Black Lives Matter. And so that's why the hashtag was started.
So originally when it first started, it actually wasn't a movement. It was actually, it became a movement like quite quickly, didn't it? But it wasn't an organized movement. But now it's a highly organized movement. There's three, I believe it's 3 young Black women that are behind the movement now.
That's correct.
And that now it's organized. It's very organized, and
yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, they're doing all kinds of stuff. So, what's your response to that movement? How do you feel about it? How do you feel about their message and what it is that they're trying to do?
That's a good question. I guess what my response would be is that when I'm looking at that, when I see Black Lives Matter, um, it's not just a it's not like a political slogan or something. It's not a debate. It's just a matter of this is a slogan and a movement which speaks to issues that I've encountered growing up, things that I've seen, things that I've known that have been going on, and and I'm thankful that I'm just looking at I just look at the movement and the slogan as being something which just shines a light on that experience, which calls attention to those things. So my focus is really on the issues that are happening, the problems when it comes to things like incarceration or the police brutality and a whole range of economic issues, a whole range of things which which are at the forefront of Black life in America and in other parts of the world too, frankly. But those are the things that I think of when I see that message. I'm not really thinking about like the organization or the politics. I'm hoping that they're doing a good job. I'm hoping that the people that are behind it are good people. But I'm thankful that that's shining a light on the experience and on the issues which matter to me.
Oh, cool. Let's talk about that a little bit because I want to talk a little bit about your childhood and things your mother shared with you. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I would just say that, I was born in California, but early on, before I started grade school, my parents moved to the South in Alabama. And for those of you that don't know, Alabama is the place where the civil rights movement in America. You guys might be familiar with Martin Luther King. And so his movement started in Alabama. That's where when you see movies like Selma, which kind of document a lot of the atrocities that happened during the Jim Crow era in America in the 50s and 60s. That a lot of that took place in Alabama. So I grew up in Alabama, spent some of my childhood in Alabama. And one thing my mom had to tell me when I was a child is she had to kneel down and tell me, in response to certain experiences that I related to her, she had to say, Stephen, as a Black boy, you are not going to be treated fairly as everyone else. People are not going to judge you the same way that they judge someone else. So she said that as a Black boy, you've got to be better, as more exemplary as a Black boy than everyone else, because you don't have as much room for error.
And you even mentioned the other day when we were talking about it, you mentioned like kind of having to look over your shoulder and how you feel when you come in a room and there's certain people there and stuff. Like how has that experience been lived out for you? Like, is that, what your mom told you, is it true? Do you feel as though that is how you, like she was right in telling you that, and that's your experience verifies it?
It's kind of like there is a sizable percentage of my experience that's significant enough that I have to keep my Spider-Man senses on all the time, right? Because I don't know when I will encounter a situation that could be dangerous for me, right? And that goes into all areas of my life. It's not just like, whether I'm going into a store and shopping and I don't want someone to think that I'm going to shoplift something. Most of the time, most people are not going to think that. But sometimes they are. Enough times they'll think that I have to kind of have a sense about it, right? Be aware of my surroundings and be aware of be intentional about my actions. But then it's also in work. It comes into, Black people have not, essentially Black people for a long period of time in America have been sort of locked out of the society. They couldn't buy businesses. They couldn't buy homes. There's a lot of things they couldn't do. They were locked up disproportionately. They couldn't get loans. And so Black people are not in positions of power to the same extent as white people, or even other minorities that have immigrated more recently, because Black folks have had to overcome that legacy of being locked out of society or being marginalized in society. So there are things that can come up with work and with performance and with your bosses, people who are in charge, that sometimes can be unfair. They can be hostile. So these are all kinds of little things that kind of sprinkle the American experience for someone like me who's middle class. And I want to say that there is a big difference between a guy who's like me, who's middle class, right, or people who are even upper class, versus people who are poor and or the working class, right? And those are the people that have it the worst in America, because they're exploited. The police come into their houses and, bust their doors down, get them for petty drug things. They can't get jobs and they live in ghettos. And so that experience is very different. Like for me, I can talk about things in a very rosy way most of the time. Most of the time, my life is happy. I get to hang out with cool people like you. I have friends that are cool. And so most of my life is good, but other people who have had the legacy of America weighing more heavily upon them, they have it, that's their experience every day, right? It's not as intermittent as it is for me.
Right. Wow. So you talked about the other day when we were talking, you talked about sort of seeing, like, having a perspective before you went to university and then how that changed. What was your perspective before you went to university and then you went off to Oakwood College?
Yeah, I think part of the effect of America's history and sort of the imagery and the power structure in America is that it kind of stripped my confidence a little bit, right? Like the kind of person that I'm built to be was not affirmed in the America that I grew up in. So I wasn't able to. I think I'm kind of, I don't know. I'm kind of a guy who likes to be. Who I won't say likes to be, but I'm very comfortable in being upfront or expressing myself. That I'm a singer and I do those types of things. And but I didn't see myself reflected in the power structures of America, whether that be the dollar bills or the monuments or even in the neighborhoods or the places, the people in government. Most of those people didn't look like me. They didn't. We're disproportionately underrepresented in places of power in America. That's changing, but growing up, that wasn't the case. So I would find affirmation in only very few places, like basketball or sports, because that's where I could see people who are upfront and being more confident, or even in hip hop music, And so you're seeing hip hop, you're seeing on the streets. These are where leaders and people who are outspoken, this is where they are. And so that's kind of where my energy and where I was growing up. I kind of took on that, that energy. I took on that sort of persona. But
you're talking about like you sort of took on like the rappers, the ghetto sort of like is that what you're talking about?
Right. Yeah. I was trying to be a hood fabulous a little bit, right? So
fabulous.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. But also what they were saying, it resonated with me that they were confident. They were speaking against, they were like fight the power type energy. And so that kind of resonated with me. But when I went to Oakwood, that wasn't the case. I saw people from all parts of the spectrum, the people who were failing, the people who were succeeding, the people who were in charge, the people who weren't in charge. Everyone was Black. And so that kind of recentered me. It kind of showed me, hey, look, you can be anyone you want to be. The world you're a human being. You can be anything that you see in the world. And I only spent 1 year there at Oakwood, but that kind of infused me with a lot of confidence. And then I went to a very diverse school in Andrews University. And I think that I like diverse places. I like being around different people. I make friends with everyone. I wasn't able to really I wasn't able to really succeed in that environment until I got the confidence that I received at Oakwood.
So once you left Oakwood, you came to Spokane. Well, there's a lot that happened before Spokane,
Yeah.
Isn't there? Like
Oakwood, I graduated, but I eventually came to Spokane.
Yeah, Andrews University. So I guess I want to talk more about sort of your experience because you shared. Well, you said you wanted to share something about Spokane.
Yes.
But I also
Yes.
want to talk about your experience in Simi
I'm
Valley.
gonna start with Simi Valley. I want to tell you
Yeah.
a quick story there,
Yeah.
and then I'll tell you my story in Spokane. It's
Yeah.
two stories, two opposite sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So the first one in Simi Valley, it was during my last year living there. I had already moved to Atlanta, but I came back to live in to go back to California to kind of finish up some work that I needed to do out there. And so I actually went to stay at a friend's house who lived just down the road from where I used to live in California. So I was staying in a friend's house who lived in essentially the same neighborhood that I lived in. So I'm staying in his house, and so I have access to his house now. And so I'm come in. He was actually, my friends went to the beach, and they asked me if I wanted to come to the beach. And I bet you know my response when they asked me to come out. I was like, no, I want to go inside the house. And so I walked inside the house, and then about an hour, I stayed there for about an hour, and then decided to take a shower. And while I was taking the shower, there was a knock on the door, and I just like knocking, it just kept getting more and more and more. And so I called my friend. I was like, hey, are you expecting someone? He was like, no. And the knocking kept going, and I'm in my shower. I have one foot in the shower, one foot out of the shower, right? So I'm dripping, talking on the phone, and then it's like, now I'm realizing they're gonna bust the door down. And so I hear police. And so I'm like, oh snap. So I thankfully I had some pajamas that were just kind of like on the sink. And I just kind of grabbed them, didn't even put on the underwear. I didn't put on a towel, just kind of like grabbed them. I'm soaking wet, threw on my pajamas, ran down the stairs, didn't put on a shirt. I have my cell phone on, and I open up the door, and there at the end of the door is a police with, like SWAT gear on, and he has like a gun out, and he's like, come on out. He has his gun. And so I'm like shocked. I'm like, what's going on? And then he's like, what's in your hand? And so I have my cell phone in my hand. And so I'm like, I'm still shocked. So I'm holding my cell phone like this. I'm like, I have my hands up. And so I'm like half naked. And then he's like, come on out. And then, they took me out into like the driveway, and all the neighbors can see me half naked in the driveway. And they're like questioning me. And there's like a whole bunch of cops that just come out they're surrounding the house, and they have like dogs and everything. And so
Heck,
essentially,
are you serious?
no, I'm telling you, this is the story. I don't have any other story to tell. So they come on out, they have all their guns and their riot gear on, and they're like questioning what's going on. But someone in the neighborhood had said, hey, there's someone like sneaking into this house, broke into this house. I don't know what they said. And so that precipitated the cops coming. But one positive thing about that interaction was the cops were trained, and the police had the gun pointed down. So when he got excited, he didn't just shoot me and kill me. And a lot of police across America have been in that same situation, and we've seen some of those high profiles. And those people didn't survive because those cops weren't trained how to deal with that. So I'm actually thankful that could have been a life-altering situation. So that's that one story in Simi Valley. And I could tell you more. You can't go into it, but I have friends who have gone through things that are way, way, way worse than that, right? So that's my story in Simi Valley. Now, on Spokane, I had another story, and it actually involves that guy I met at that church, the dude who was nice to me at the church. He was there, and we went into the gym. You're going to pick up on this story very quickly. We went into the gym to go play hoops, and while we were there playing hoops, there was like, it was like crazy. It was like there was two teams that went to go play. We were waiting. We had next, and there were two teams playing, and one of the teams was predominantly black, and the other team was predominantly white, or all white.
I think it was white and all black, wasn't it?
They were all white. I think there may have been some little stragglers in the black side, but it was virtually all black, right? Yeah. And the thing about it is that both sides were like notorious for being jerks. It's like crazy. It was like they were both jerks, like on both sides. And so they were playing each other for some reason. It just ended up being that way. And then there was like a little bit of a skiff somewhere, an altercation, and someone was like talking trash, and there's like a black dude who was like the super jerk, and he like smacked the little kid and like pushed him out of the way. And then the ringleader from the white side was like, "What you doing?" And then he met with the ringleader from the black side. They were like middle of the court. They're coming at each other, and then he got in the face. And then the black dude pushed the white dude in the face, and the white dude kept coming, and then like punched him. And then once after he punched him, all you know what broke loose.
So bad,
It was just like a barroom brawl, fights every side, every corner, like people throwing bows, throwing punches, kicking folks. I'm sitting here looking at this. I look over at you, and you're like shocked. I'm shocked, and I'm like, I see someone get kicked in the face, and I'm like, I'm done here.
I couldn't believe it. I've never seen, to this day, I've never seen anything like that, dude. That was...
It was like straight out of like some kind of a barroom movie like a Western or something.
And the thing about that experience, that it's funny you bring it up, because the thing about that experience is like, and I think I shared this with you the other day. Like the way I grew up, like, man, my best friend Sean was black. We used to play basketball together. There was Cubans living behind me. I had Koreans living across from me. White people on both sides, Japanese. My friend Mikey was Japanese, and we all played together. So I didn't grow up in this environment where the whites versus black thing. And then here I am in Spokane. I'm here with my best mate Steven, and you're black, I'm white.
Right.
And we go to this place, and here's this white on black brawl takes place.
But look, here's the part that I
I'll
really
never
want
forget that, man, because dudes were getting knocked out.
It looked dangerous. Like some of those blows that those guys were landing, I'm like, I'm pretty sure some of those guys have like brain damage now.
It was ugly. We left.
No, I left.
Yeah, you were like, I'm out.
I left, and I started working on shoulders. It was going to be shoulder day, not cardio anymore. I was like, that's it. And so I'm back there working on my shoulders, and then I look inside the thing, and I see you in there, and you're like getting to another fight with somebody in there, like all this stuff. But it turned out that someone came and broke you up, and then you're coming out to me, and you have like your face is all red. I'm just laughing, and then then you came and you screamed like, someone in there called them the N-word, use the N-word in there, which the N-word is in America is nigger, which is the most derogatory word that you can use, racist language you can use for black people in America. And so he's like, someone called the N-word in there, and so you're mad. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm like, oh, man, because I kind of knew those guys were jerks already, but it just kind of like, that kind of just sunk my spirit, because it was kind of like, oh, here we go with this again, And
so I must have been getting in a fight with a white dude then.
It was with a white dude. You were getting in a fight with him. And so you're out there and you're sitting here. Now you're just like, you're on a roll. You're like, people are doing these things, and I don't like when I don't like this thing. Right. And so I just fall quiet, because like, I'm at the stage where it just kind of like, I'm just disappointed in the whole, like, this is my life again. Right. Like, this is what we got to go through here. And so you're going on, you're mad. But then the dude that you were about to get in a fight with, he came over to our machinery, and he came to apologize, and he was like, I said this, it was not right. And I'll never forget how you responded, because I really liked it, because I didn't say anything. I didn't have to say anything. You were like, you didn't let him off. You weren't like, oh, it's okay, man. You just like straight scolding him. You were like, you don't use that word. That's not something you do. I don't ever want to hear that again. It's not fair. And so the dude had his head down, and he was like, man, he was like, he looked like he was, it just looked like he was devastated. And now I'm looking at him, and I'm like, oh, this is, I like the way he handled that. I really like the way he handled that. And I don't know. I think what I liked about that situation, because it really taught me something. I learned a lot from that situation. I never told you about this, but it really learned a lot. I learned a lot about it, because it really showed how the way that I felt defended, and I felt like someone had spoken up for me at that moment. Obviously, it wasn't for me. You would have done that for anybody. If someone had talked about girls that way, you would have done that. But like, I felt like you saw something that was wrong. You didn't let it slide under the radar. You spoke out against it. And I really saw, and in that moment, I experienced the value of that. And, so that really spoke to me. It's like, you know what, when I see something wrong, I got to speak out about it. I got to make sure that I try to correct the world in whatever corner of the world that I'm in. and seeing your passion and seeing your energy, the energy you had in response to that, I felt was appropriate, and it really added something to my life that I still to this day try to. It's a standard that I still try to maintain in my life to this day. So, thank you for that memory.
Well, I just remember the fight. That's all I remember. I remember the fight. I remember there was stuff going on afterwards, but
Yeah.
but I don't remember.
You were part of that stuff that was going on afterwards, man.
I want to give you an opportunity. We don't have we're out of time,
Yeah,
really.
time.
I'm probably gonna have to edit this down,
Mhm.
but tell me what would a message that you would have for the students and the staff at school, like when it comes to dealing with this type of stuff and like and living it out.
I think the message that I would have is simple. Um, injustice injustice is built in such a way that it's convenient to ignore, right? Especially if you are not on the receiving end of it, right? Whenever people design systems of injustice, they are designed in such a way so that those who are not experiencing that injustice can be oblivious to it and not have any uh, understanding, not know where it comes from. It's built intentionally that way, to keep people who are not receiving the injustice comfortable, and while those who are receiving that injustice, to keep them silent or to keep them marginalized. Right? It's kind of like Jesus with the lepers. Like the lepers are meant to be out of sight, out of mind. Right? And their suffering is not to be, see, no one's supposed to see that, right? But I think that's one thing that, if we're going to bring it into our faith, that's one thing Jesus did, is that he put a magnifying glass, or he had his eyes specifically trained on those who are in the margins, and he amplified their concerns, and he made their concerns. He raised the awareness of their concerns, and so I think that is something that we can all of us. And like I said, I like to bring out that story from our time together, because I think it's important. I think if we all could have a sort of like a sense or a sensitivity to what is wrong in the world, those who are marginalized, learn to listen, learn to find their stories. And if you see something unjust, amplify it, right? Like amplify with it. And like that's what you did. You saw something unjust, and that guy probably felt that it was safe to say that word around you, and if you wouldn't have said anything, you would have proved him right, and he would have felt more emboldened in living this world and made life more treacherous for people like me. But by you standing out and saying, you made a possibility for the world to be a better place, right? And so I think that I guess to kind of boil down my my final point here is, put an ear to the door of the people who are who are suffering injustice. Learn what they're going through. Have a sense for it. Become fluent in what they're going through, and then you can become a voice for the widow and for the fatherless, those who don't have a prominent voice in society. And that way you can become, like Jesus says, a peacemaker. Because when there's an absence of justice, eventually there will be an absence of peace. And so being a peacemaker is about bringing justice and equity into the world.
I really, really appreciate you taking the time today, man, to hang out with us. Is there hope? Is there hope in the midst of this this struggle that we're seeing right now?
I think there's a ton of hope, man. The fact that we're having this conversation, this is reason for hope. The fact that I was able to turn on my Facebook and see you guys out there in Australia, that gave me hope. Just everything that we're seeing, movement, action, people, introspection. These are all signs of hope. When there's a lack of that, and these things continue, that's even when it's sometimes relatively peaceful, that doesn't give me hope. But this time of a little bit of upheaval, a little bit of rocking the boat, that's just essentially everyone learning to share in some of the experiences that those of us in the margins, and in some ways I'm not really even in the margins, in some certain ways, economically, in certain other kind of ways, but other people who have different marginal experiences, this is a time where people are sharing in their experience, and that's the reason why there's upheaval. And so that gives me hope.
Mm. Thanks, brother. Can you say a prayer for us?
Yeah, why not? Dear Heavenly Father, I'm thankful to for my brother Brian, and for all of his his students and coworkers at his school. Thank you that we've had this time together. I'm thankful that you've enrolled all of us in the work of peacemaking. Thank you that even in our homes, in our neighborhoods, we have a role to play, and that you believe in us. You believe in our ability to be the voice to the widow and to the fatherless and to those in the shadows. Make us more fluent in the language and in the behavior of peacemaking. Help us to be successful. I ask you, please be with every child and teen and young adult and adult at Brian's school. Lord, I'm asking that you would endow them with all of your power, and that their coming together in that institution would be for the changing of the world, for Australia and beyond. It would be consequential. So thank you, Lord, that you're rocking the boat right now. We ask that you please guide us through it. And we thank you for friendships and for family. I pray these things in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Hey, thanks, brother. I'm going to stop recording, then
Okay.
We can chat a bit for a second after.
Sounds good.
Ain't gonna let nobody